Chika wandered aimlessly through dark streets, her body trembling with exhaustion, fear, and guilt. The cold Lagos night seemed unforgiving as she tried to piece together a plan. She could not go home, at least not yet, not without exposing Madame Fumi's horrific secrets. She wiped away her tears, determined to find out the truth about what happened to babies. 2 weeks passed and Chika had been living in hiding, surviving on scraps that she found or was given by sympathetic strangers. During this time, she kept replaying Joke's words about Ego's death and the disturbing silence of the newborn babies. Something was terribly wrong. Chika needed to know what Madame Fumi did with those babies and she needed proof to bring her down. She would sneak and hang around the house every night to monitor activities. One night, as she carefully planned her next steps, she spotted a familiar face on the street. It was a young woman carrying a bag, about to enter the estate where she had escaped from. Chika immediately recognized her from the house. Her name was Amaka. Amaka is one of the girls she found there before she escaped. She followed her, keeping her distance. Amaka was being escorted by one of Madame Fumi's guards into a different building from the one Chika had escaped. It is in the same estate but seemed more discreet, hidden from the public eye and surrounded by thick vegetation. This building was unfamiliar to Chika as she felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. As Amaka disappeared inside, Chika crouched near the compound's gate, peeking through the bars. She had no way of getting inside until a stroke of luck came her way. A delivery truck pulled up and as the gate opened, Chika seized the moment to slip inside unnoticed. She snuck towards the back of the building, her heart pounding in her chest. The building had high walls and through a small barred window, she could see a dimly lit room. Inside, women in labor lay on beds unattended and screaming in pain. Chika's heart broke. She could hear muffled voices and recognized one of them, Madame Fumi's cold, commanding tone. Chika took a deep breath and pressed herself against the wall, moving closer to the voices. She found a side door, slightly ajar, leading into the basement and quietly she slipped inside. The basement was dim, the air thick with the smell of chemicals. Large steel drums lined on the walls, and shelves were stacked with plastics filled with mysterious creams. Chika's stomach turned as she realized this was where the creams were made. She moved further in, and as she rounded a corner, she froze. In front of her was a sight more horrifying than she could ever imagine. Babies, dozens of them, lay in small metal cribs, heavily silent. Their tiny bodies were hooked to strange machines, tubes extracting something from them. Chika covered her mouth, suppressing a scream. The sight was sickening. This was no skincare industry. It was a nightmare. At the far end of the room, she saw a group of women in white lab coats working on machines that blended the extracted fluids into large drums. One of them turned around, revealing a tray of plastics with the familiar label of Fumi's organic cream. Chika's legs almost gave way beneath her. The infamous cream that people across the country loved was made from the essence of these innocent babies. Chika's mind raced. She needed to expose this. But how? She could not stay long. The guards would soon notice her. She quickly scanned the room for something, anything that could serve as an evidence. Her eyes landed on a file sitting on one of the tables, filled with detailed records of the babies, their extractions and the process used to manufacture the creams. She grabbed the file, shoving it under her armpit, and turned to leave when she heard a voice behind her. Looking for something? Chika's heart stopped. Madame Fumi stood at the doorway, her eyes blazing with fury. The guards flanked her, blocking the exit. Chika took a step back, clutching the file tightly. I knew you would come back, Madame Fumi said, her voice dripping with malice. I also knew that you were not crazy. You were just too curious for your own good. But now that you're here, you are never gonna leave. Chika's mind raced. She had to think fast. There was no way out, except one. In a desperate move, Chika knocked over one of the large drums of cream, spilling its contents all over the floor. The chemicals mixed with the cream ignited a small fire, and the guards panicked. Fumi screamed in rage as the fire spread. Get her! She shouted. But Chika was already running. She dashed towards the door, weaving between the guards as they struggled to control the growing flames. She burst out of the building, the fire still hidden under her shirt, and she ran as fast as she could into the night. With the evidence in her possession, Chika knew what she had to do. She needed to expose Madame Fumi and her monstrous business, not just for her sister's sake, but for all the women and babies who had suffered in the house of horrors. Chika kept running until her legs felt numb, her breath shallow and her heart hammering in her chest. She did not stop until she was far away from the compound, her lungs burning. The file, now damp with sweat, was the only thing she had left, the evidence that could take Madame Fumi down. She knew she could not go to the police, not yet. Fumi's influence ran deep, and Chika had no idea who in the authorities might be on her payroll. She needed a plan, and most importantly, she needed someone who could help her expose the truth. She found shelter in an abandoned building, her mind racing with possibilities as she spent the night there. 2 days passed before Chika gathered enough courage to leave the safety of her hiding spot. Foreman headed to a local market, determined to find someone who could help her. As she weaved through the crowd, her eyes darted around nervously, fearing that any moment one of Fumi's men would recognize her. She sat at a newspaper stand to take a breath and an idea occurred to her. She begged the vendor to read the papers and she immediately wrote down the number of the publisher. She left the stand away from prying eyes. She gave the vendor a necklace in exchange for his phone and she called the newspaper publisher, Mr. Badmus. She informed him about the information she has about a wealthy woman who uses babies to make organic creams. She did not say who or where. The man told her that he can't just publish his story without ensuring its authenticity. So, he connected her to an investigative journalist, Tola, who would help get strong evidence and ensure that the story is real. Tola gave her a location for them to meet that night and she hung up the call. That night, Chika arrived at an old abandoned church near the market. She waited in the darkness, her nerves fraying with each passing minute. At exactly 7 p.m., a car pulled up to the church. A woman in her mid-30s stepped out of the car, dressed professionally, but with an air of confidence that suggested she had dealt with dangerous people before. She introduced herself as Tola, an investigative journalist with a reputation for uncovering dark secrets in high places. You said you have information on a trafficking ring, right? Tola asked, her eyes scanning the area, cautious but curious. Chika stepped forward. Yes, but it is not just trafficking. Madam Fumi, the owner of Fumi's organic cream, has been using babies, I mean newborn babies, to make her products. I was one of the girls she held captive in a baby factory. An ago, my sister died there. Tola's face hardened. Are you saying she's using the babies for cosmetic purposes? Yes, Chika replied, pulling out the file. I managed to escape and I took this with me. It is a records document detailing how the babies are harvested, the substances extracted from them and how they are processed into the creams. Tala took the file and flipped through the pages, her expression grim. This is beyond anything I've ever seen. She muttered, this could bring our entire empire down. But we need to be careful, Chika interjected. Fumi has powerful connections. If she finds out we are trying to expose her, she will come for us. Tola nodded, her face set with determination. I will handle this carefully. We will need to gather more evidence and I will have to get the story into the right hands. This kind of corruption won't go down easily. Chika's hands trembled as she looked at Tola. So, will you help me? Tola placed a reassuring hand on Chika's shoulder. I have taken down powerful people before. This won't be easy, but with your story and this evidence, we can do it. As they discussed the plan further, they did not see the shadow lurking behind the corner of the church. One of Fumi's men had been watching them the entire time, his eyes fixed on Chika. He quickly stepped back into the darkness, dialing his phone. "We found her," he whispered into the receiver. "Tell Madam Fumi we will take care of it." Chika and Tola had no idea that danger was already closing in on them. Tola folded the file and placed it carefully in a bag. "I will need to take this to a safe place," she said, her voice low. "We'll need more evidence before we can move forward." "More evidence? I can't go back there. Funmi will kill me if she catches me," Chika asked as she shook in fear. "I am not asking you to go back," Tola reassured her. "But there are others. We need to find the girls who have already given birth. The ones who were supposed to be released. If we can locate even one of them, we will have more testimony to back up your story." Chika felt a heart drop. She remembered Ego's close friend, Ineka, who had been 6 months pregnant when she first arrived at Fumi's factory. Ineka had seemed eager to leave after delivering, but no one ever heard from her again. Chika did not give it much thought as a then, assuming she had simply disappeared to start a new life. But now, the realization that Ineka might still be trapped somewhere, or even worse, hit her. Tola stood up, glancing around the darkened street. "We can't stay here any longer. Fumi has eyes everywhere. If our men find us..." Just then, a loud crack rang out from behind the church. Chika froze, her blood turning cold. Tola instinctively reached for her bag, pulling out a phone. Before they could react, three men stepped out of the shadows, their eyes partially hidden by the dim light. The largest of the three took a step forward, his voice gruff and cold. "Fumi sends her regards," he said, a cross smirk playing on his lips. Chika felt her heart plummet into her stomach. "Run!" Tola shouted, shoving Chika toward the back entrance of the church. Chika stumbled but quickly regained her balance, sprinting down the narrow alleyway as fast as she could. Tola stayed behind, her phone in her hand, frantically dialing a number as she backed away from the approaching men. "I am a journalist," she warned, her voice steady but tense. "If you touch me, there will be consequences." The leader of the group sneered. "We don't care who you are." Fumi's orders were clear. No one survives this. The men suddenly lunged at Tola, but she ducked, narrowly avoiding his grasp. She bolted toward the alley where Chika had disappeared, her heart pounding in her chest. She could hear the men closing in behind her, their footsteps growing louder. Meanwhile, Chika dashed through the maze of streets, her breath ragged and labored. She did not know where she was going to. All she knew was that she had to get away. As she ran, the sounds of pursuit echoed in the still night behind her. Chika scanned the area desperately, looking for any place to hide. Just then, she sighted an old crumbling building with a shattered window, and she squeezed through the narrow window, barely making it inside before the sound of footsteps reached the street outside. She held her breath as she listened to the men outside. "She went this way," one of the men growled. "Spread out, she can't be far." Chika's hands shook as she stayed still, hardly daring to breathe. The sound of boots on gravel came closer, and Chika's heart felt like it was going to explode from the tension. They were so close, just outside the building. Suddenly, the footsteps stopped. There was silence for a long moment. Then the men's voices faded as they moved further down the street. Chika let out a shaky breath, her chest tight with fear. Chika knows she has to find Tola because she has the evidence. But as she prepared to leave, the men heard a faint sound, a phone ringing. Chika's heart sank as she realized it was coming from inside her pocket. She had forgotten to turn off her phone. The ringing was loud in the silent building. Chika's eyes widened in horror as the footsteps outside suddenly stopped. The men had heard the sound, and now they are coming back for her. She got up immediately, ready to leave. She scrambled towards the back of the building, looking for another exit. But as she reached the back door, it burst open and one of Fumi's men stood there, blocking her way. "You really thought you could get away?" he sneered, stepping inside the building. His hand reached into his coat, pulling out a gun. Chika's blood ran cold. as the man raised the gun, pointing it directly at her. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, a loud crash echoed from behind him. The man spun around, confused, and in that split second, Tola appeared from the shadows, swinging a heavy piece of wood into the back of his head. The man crumpled on the floor, unconscious. "Come on!" Tola shouted, her voice urgent. "We have to get out of here." Without hesitation, Chika followed her out of the building, sprinting into the night once more. They had barely escaped with their lives, but now they knew one thing for sure. Funmi was not going to stop until they are dead. As Chika and Tola ran through the dark streets, they knew there was no turning back. The clock was ticking and Funmi's men would be after them with even more ferocity now that they had wounded one of our guards. They had to act fast before Funmi could silence them for good. They found temporary refuge in an old abandoned warehouse near the outskirts of town. The air inside was musty, and the faint light filtering through the broken windows cast eerie shadows across the floor. Tola quickly locked the door behind them and slumped against the wall, catching her breath. "We can't keep running forever," Chika said, her voice shaky but resolute. "We need to expose her." "But how? Fumi controls the police, the media, everything. Who will believe us?" Tola, still panting, looked up at Chika. "I know someone. A lawyer who has been after people like Fumi for years. Someone who is not afraid of her money or her power." "Can we trust them?" Chika asked, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Yes," Tola replied. "If anyone can help us, it is her. But we need more than just this file." She held up the file, now damp from sweat. "We need hard evidence. Photos, videos, something undeniable." Chika swallowed hard. The idea of going back to Fumi's compound filled her with dread, but she knew it was the only way. "We have to go back," Chika said, her voice firm. "We sneak in, get what we need, and get out before anyone knows we are there." Tola and Chika exchanged a glance, both women hesitant, but understanding that this was the only option left. With a resigned nod, Tola agreed. "It is risky, but it is our best shot." Later that night, the two women returned to the outskirts of Fumi's compound. The estate loomed in the distance, its tall walls and security cameras making it seem impenetrable. But Tola had a plan. There was a blind spot in the security system near the black gate where deliveries came in. With any luck, they could slip in unnoticed. As they crept through the shadows, Chika's heart pounded in her chest. She could not help but think about her sister Ego. She had died in this place, along with so many others, and now it was time to make sure their deaths were not in vain. When they reached the back gate, Tola quickly disabled the camera using a small device she had brought with her. "We have 10 minutes before they notice the camera is done," she whispered. "Let's move." Inside, the compound was eerily quiet. Most of the guards had retreated to their posts at the front gates, leaving only a few patrolling the grounds. Chika and Tola slipped past them, moving swiftly towards the main building where Fumi's operations took place. They entered through a side door, the scent of chemicals and creams heavy in the air. The building was dimly lit, and Chika's heart raced as they made their way towards the basement where Fumi's secret lab is located. It was not long before they found the door. It was locked, but Tola produced a small set of lock-picking tools from her bag. Within moments, the door clicked open, revealing a cold, sterile room filled with medical equipment. Chika's stomach turned at the sight of this. Rolls and jars and containers lined the shelves, each one filled with strange substances. But it wasn't until they reached the far side of the room that they found what they had been searching for. In a large refrigerated cabinet were dozens of small bottles, each one labeled with a date and a code. Tola pulled out the bottles out, holding it up to the light. "These are the baby's tissues," she whispered, her voice shaking with disgust. "She is using them to make a cream." Chika felt bile rise in her throat. It was worse than she imagined. Fumi was not just trafficking babies. She was harvesting their cells to make a skincare product. This was the secret behind our organic creams, the reason why they worked so well. The babies were the real ingredients. Chica, unable to hold back her horror, gasped, "We need to get out of here." But as they turned to leave, the heard footsteps approaching, panic setting as they realized they had been discovered. They had to act fast. "Hide!" Tola hissed, shoving the bottles into her bag. The two women ducked behind a large shelf, holding their breath as the door creaks open. Two of Fumi's guards entered the room, their eyes scanning the area. "I thought I heard something," one of them said, his voice low and suspicious. "Check the cameras." "Funmi said no one should be down there," the other replied. As they stepped further into the room, Chika's heart raced. If they were caught now, it will all be over. But as the guards moved towards the refrigerated cabinet, a loud crash echoed from inside the room. The guards exchanged a glance before rushing out to investigate. "Now!" Tola whispered urgently. They darted from their hiding spots and raced towards the exit. The halls were still empty, but the sound of alarms ringing in the distance meant they had little time left. They sprinted towards the back gate, the bottle safely tucked away in Tola's bag. Just as they reached the gate, a group of guards spotted them and opened fire. Chika felt a sharp pain in her leg as a bullet grazed her thigh, but she kept running, refusing to let the pain slow her down. They burst through the gates and into the night, disappearing into the dark streets before the guards could catch up with them. 2 weeks later, the story broke out. Tola's lawyer friend had taken the bottles, the footage from the lab, and testimonies from Chika to the authorities. Choke and the other girls were also able to record the video where they shared their horrific experience in the hands of Madame Fumi. The media picked up the story and soon, Fumi's empire began to crumble. Investigations revealed the full extent of her operation: human trafficking, illegal medical practices, and the horrifying truth behind the skincare products. Funmi was arrested along with her entire network of collaborators, including Habib the meat seller and the man who brought Chika and Ego. The news sent shockwaves through the country, and a once thriving business collapsed overnight. Chika was able to get Ego's corpse out of there, and she was taken to her hometown where she was given a proper burial. Chika stood in front of Ego's grave, tears streaming down her face. She had kept her promise. She had brought Funmi to justice, not just for herself, but for her sister and the other girls who had suffered in the hands of Madame Funmi. "You did it, Ego," she whispered, placing a single flower on Ego's grave. "I'm so sorry I could not save you, but your death will not be in vain." Behind her, Joke and Tola stood in silence, offering their quiet support. The fight was over, but the scars will remain. As they walked away from the graveyard, Chika and Joke knew that their lives would never be the same. But for the first time in a long time, they felt a sense of peace. Fumi had been stopped and the truth had finally come to light. The nightmare was over.